In the small, fog-blanketed village of Alden Hollow, whispers of a peculiar child circulated like the winds that rustled through the ancient oak trees. The villagers spoke in hushed tones about young Alara, a girl with unnaturally pale skin and eyes as dark as the midnight sky. Her presence alone sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to glance her way. Alara lived on the outskirts of Alden Hollow, in a decrepit mansion that had long been abandoned before her family moved in. The villagers claimed they saw eerie lights flickering in the mansion's windows at odd hours of the night, accompanied by strange, haunting melodies that floated through the air. One crisp autumn evening, as the harvest moon cast its silvery glow over the village, Alara wandered into the heart of Alden Hollow. Her steps were silent, and her gaze piercing as she moved through the cobblestone streets. The villagers avoided her, pulling their children inside and bolting their doors. But there was one who could not escape her path: Oliver, a meek, timid boy who lived in a rundown cottage with his ailing mother. Oliver had always been fascinated by the stories of the supernatural, often spending his nights reading about vampires and other creatures that lurked in the dark. When Alara approached him, he felt an inexplicable pull, a blend of fear and curiosity that rooted him to the spot. "Do you believe in the darkness, Oliver?" Alara's voice was a soft whisper, like the rustling of leaves in the wind. Oliver nodded, unable to tear his gaze away from her haunting eyes. "Would you like to see it?" she asked, extending her hand. Against his better judgment, Oliver took her hand, and they ventured into the dense forest that bordered the village. The trees seemed to close in around them, and an unnatural silence fell over the world. Alara led Oliver to a clearing where an ancient, crumbling mausoleum stood, bathed in the pale moonlight. She pushed open the heavy, stone door with ease and beckoned him inside. The air within was cold and still, and the darkness seemed to press in on them from all sides. As they descended deeper into the mausoleum, Oliver's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the weight of centuries-old secrets pressing down upon him. At the heart of the crypt, Alara stopped before an ornate, iron-bound coffin. With a single, fluid motion, she lifted the lid. Inside lay a figure, dressed in tattered, regal clothing. Its skin was ashen, and its fangs glistened in the dim light. Oliver realized with a jolt that he was looking at a vampire creature he had only ever read about in his books. "This is my ancestor," Alara whispered. "He was once a great lord, but he fell into darkness, and now his power flows through my veins." Oliver's fear turned to terror as he understood the implications of her words. Alara was not just a peculiar child, she was a vampire, destined to grow into a monstrous adult, and he was trapped in her web. As the shadows closed in around them, Oliver knew that the intrigue was far from over. The true horror was only just beginning, and Alden Hollow would never be the same again. Alara's revelation hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy with dread. Oliver's mind raced, searching for a way out, but the iron grip of fear kept him rooted in place. The vampire in the coffin stirred, its eyes snapping open, glowing a malevolent red in the dim light. It sat up slowly, its gaze locking onto Alara. "My bloodline," it rasped, its voice like the rustling of dry leaves. "You have awakened me." Alara nodded, her expression a mix of reverence and determination. "I have come to learn from you, to embrace the power within me." The vampire's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Then let us begin." With a sudden, swift movement, the vampire grasped Alara's wrist, pulling her closer. Oliver watched in horror as the vampire's fangs sank into her skin, the sound of her heartbeat echoing in the crypt. Alara's eyes fluttered shut, her body trembling as the ancient power coursed through her veins. Moments later, the vampire released her, and she staggered back, her eyes now glowing with an eerie, crimson light. She turned to Oliver, her expression unreadable. "You have seen too much," she said softly. "You must become part of this, or you will not leave this place alive." Oliver's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the gravity of his situation. He could either embrace the darkness or become its next victim. As Alara stepped closer, the ancient vampire watching with a twisted smile, Oliver's instinct screamed at him to run, but his feet refused to move. Alara extended her hand once more. "Join me, Oliver." Together, We can wield unimaginable power. Oliver swallowed hard, his mind a whirlwind of fear and desperation. Could he truly embrace this dark path? The thought of becoming a vampire, of living in the shadows, filled him with dread. But the alternative was death. As his hand trembled toward hers, a sudden, blinding light filled the crypt, forcing Oliver to shield his eyes. The ancient vampire hissed, recoiling from the light. When the brilliance faded, a figure stood at the entrance of the mausoleum, clad in silver armor that gleamed in the moonlight. "Release the boy," the figure commanded, a powerful voice resonating through the crypt, "or face the wrath of the Order of the Light." Alara hissed, her new fangs bared in defiance. "You dare interfere?" The knight stepped forward, brandishing a sword that shimmered with holy energy. "I dare," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "The boy is under my protection now." Oliver's heart leapt with hope as the knight positioned himself between him and the vampires. Alara's eyes narrowed, and the ancient vampire let out a low growl, but neither dared to make a move. "You cannot hide from the darkness forever," Alara spat, her voice filled with venom. The knight glanced over his shoulder at Oliver, his expression stern but reassuring. "Stay close to me," he instructed. "We must leave this place now." With the knight leading the way, Oliver found the strength to move, following him out of the crypt and into the cold night air. The forest seemed less oppressive with the knight by his side, but the weight of what he had witnessed still hung heavily on his mind. As they made their way back to the village, the knight spoke. "I am Sir Gideon of the Order of the Light. We have been watching over Eldon Hollow, aware of the growing darkness. You were brave to survive this encounter, but the danger is far from over." Oliver nodded, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. "What will happen now?" Sir Gideon looked toward the village, his expression grave. "We must prepare. Alara and her ancestor will not rest until they have claimed what they believe is theirs. The battle between light and darkness is only just beginning, and you, Oliver, may hold the key to our salvation." As they approached the village, the first rays of dawn began to break through the horizon, casting a golden glow over Eldon Hollow. Oliver knew that his life had been irrevocably changed. The shadows whispered of secrets yet to be uncovered, and he realized that his journey into the darkness was far from over. The intrigue continued, as the fate of Eldon Hollow hung in the balance, and the true nature of the power within Oliver remained a mystery waiting to be revealed. In the days following their harrowing escape from the crypt, Oliver struggled to find a sense of normalcy. The village of Eldon Hollow buzzed with rumors of strange happenings and the knight who had appeared from nowhere to protect them. Sir Gideon stayed close, training Oliver in the ways of the Order of the Light, and preparing him for the battles to come. Despite the villagers' attempts to return to their routines, the air remained thick with an unspoken tension. Alara's malevolent presence lingered like a shadow, a constant reminder of the threat lurking on the outskirts. Sir Gideon insisted on nightly patrols, and Oliver, determined to prove himself, accompanied him whenever possible. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long, sinister shadows over the village, Sir Gideon led Oliver to an ancient, overgrown library hidden in the depths of the forest. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and the faint, lingering magic of long-forgotten spells. "We need to find more about Alara's lineage and the source of her power," Sir Gideon explained, lighting a dusty lantern. "The more we understand, the better prepared we'll be to face her." Oliver nodded, his eyes scanning the rows of towering bookshelves that seemed to stretch into infinity. The library was a labyrinth of knowledge, and the secrets it held felt tantalizingly close. Hours passed as they pored over ancient tomes, deciphering cryptic texts and piecing together fragments of the past. It was Oliver who stumbled upon an old, leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant yet hurried, as if the author had been racing against time to document their thoughts. "Sir Gideon, look at this," Oliver called, holding up the journal. "It belongs to someone named Alistair Blackwood. He writes about a powerful vampire lord and a prophecy tied to his bloodline." Sir Gideon took the journal, his eyes narrowing as he read. Alistair Blackwood was a renowned vampire hunter. If this prophecy is true, it could be the key to stopping Alara and her ancestor. The journal spoke of an ancient artifact known as the luminous amulet, said to possess the power to imprison the darkest of creatures. According to the prophecy, the amulet could only be wielded by one who bore the mark of light and shadow, an individual destined to bridge the gap between darkness and light. "Do you think this could be me?" Oliver asked, a mixture of hope and trepidation in his voice. Sir Gideon placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's possible. The mark could be a metaphor, something within you that balances both light and darkness. We need to find the amulet and uncover the truth." Their search for the amulet took them deeper into the forest, guided by the clues within Alistair's journal. The journey was fraught with peril, the path winding through treacherous terrain and dense underbrush. They encountered strange, supernatural creatures, remnants of the dark magic that permeated the land. One night, as they made camp beneath the canopy of ancient trees, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed to move of their own accord, whispering secrets in the language of the night. He stood by the fire, lost in thought, when a voice broke the silence. "Oliver," a soft, familiar voice called. He turned to see Alara standing at the edge of the clearing, her eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "You shouldn't be here," Oliver said, gripping his sword tightly. Alara took a step forward, her expression unreadable. "I'm not here to fight. I came to warn you. My ancestor grows stronger every day, and he knows of your quest. He fears the prophecy. Why would you warn me?" Oliver asked, suspicion coloring his tone. Alara's gaze softened, a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "Because I didn't choose this path. I didn't choose to become a monster. There's still a part of me that remembers what it means to be human." Oliver hesitated, the conflict within him reflected in his eyes. Could he trust her? Was there truly a glimmer of humanity left in her? Before he could respond, Sir Gideon emerged from the shadows, his sword drawn. "Step away from him, Alara," he commanded. Alara's eyes hardened, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "Heed my warning, Oliver," she said, her voice cold. "The darkness is closer than you think." With that, she melted back into the shadows, leaving Oliver and Sir Gideon alone in the clearing. The knight sheathed his sword, his expression grim. "We can't let our guard down. Alara's words may be a trap." Oliver nodded, his mind a tumult of questions and doubts. The line between friend and foe was becoming increasingly blurred, and the path ahead seemed more uncertain than ever. As dawn broke, they resumed their journey, the weight of Alara's warning heavy on their minds. The forest grew denser, the air thicker with anticipation. They were close to their goal, but the true test lay ahead. In the heart of the forest, they found it a hidden cave, its entrance guarded by ancient runes that pulsed with a faint, magical light. The luminous amulet awaited within, but so did the final confrontation with the darkness that threatened to consume them all. The intrigue deepened, as the fate of Alden Hollow, and possibly the world, hinged on the decisions yet to be made and the secrets yet to be uncovered. Oliver and Sir Gideon stood at the entrance of the cave, the rune's faint glow casting eerie shadows on their faces. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, and the weight of their quest bore down on them. They exchanged a resolute glance before stepping inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. The cave twisted and turned, leading them deeper underground. The air grew colder, and an oppressive silence filled the space. Finally, they entered a vast chamber, at the center of which stood a stone pedestal. On it rested the luminous amulet, its radiance piercing the darkness. "We found it," Sir Gideon whispered, a mix of awe and relief in his voice. As they approached the amulet, a chilling laugh echoed through the chamber. Alara and her ancestor emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. The ancient vampire's presence was suffocating, his power palpable. "You think you can stop us with that trinket?" The vampire lord sneered. "You are too late." Alara stepped forward, her expression conflicted. "Oliver, don't do this. The amulet's power comes with a cost. It will destroy you." Oliver's grip tightened on his sword. "I have to try. For Alden Hollow. For everyone." The vampire lord's laughter grew louder. "Foolish boy. You cannot comprehend the true nature of the darkness you face." Sir Gideon raised his sword, its blade shimmering with holy energy. "We have no choice but to fight. The battle that ensued was fierce and relentless. Sir Gideon's blade clashed with the vampire lord's, sparks flying as their powers collided. Oliver fought Alara, their swords dancing in a deadly ballet. Despite his fear, he held his ground, his determination unwavering. But the vampires were too powerful. Sir Gideon faltered, the vampire lord's strength overwhelming him. With a final, devastating blow, the knight fell to the ground, his lifeless eyes staring into the abyss. Oliver's heart sank, a cry of anguish escaping his lips. "No!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. Alara hesitated, her eyes flickering with sorrow. "It's not too late, Oliver. Join us. Embrace the darkness." But Oliver's resolve hardened. He reached for the luminous amulet, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. The power within it surged through him, a blinding light filling the chamber. The vampire lord screamed in agony, his form disintegrating in the brilliance. Alara shielded her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Oliver, please." But Oliver couldn't hear her. The amulet's power was too great, consuming him from the inside out. He felt his very essence being torn apart, the light and darkness warring within him. With a final, desperate cry, he unleashed the amulet's full power. The chamber erupted in a blinding explosion of light, the force of it shaking the very foundations of the cave. When the light finally faded, the chamber was silent. The vampire lord was gone, reduced to ashes. Alara lay on the ground, her body lifeless, the remnants of her humanity extinguished. Oliver stood in the center of the devastation, the amulet's light flickering weakly in his hand. He fell to his knees, the weight of his sacrifice crashing down upon him. The power that had saved Eldon Hollow had also claimed his life. As his vision dimmed, he saw the faces of the villagers, the people he had fought to protect. He had saved them, but at a terrible cost. The darkness had been vanquished, but so had the light. In his final moments, Oliver whispered a silent prayer, hoping that his sacrifice would not be in vain. The amulet's light faded completely, and he slumped to the ground, his life slipping away. Eldon Hollow was safe, but the village would forever be haunted by the memory of the boy who had given everything to protect them. The shadows still whispered secrets, but now they spoke of a hero who had faced the darkness and paid the ultimate price. And so, the tale of Oliver and the whispering shadows came to a tragic end, a reminder of the fine line between light and darkness, and the sacrifices made to protect those we love.